A black waitress? A billionaire? That's the funniest thing I've heard all week. Sergeant Derek Halloran's laugh cut through the Michelin-starred restaurant. Cruel. Loud. Every wealthy white diner turned to stare. "Sir, I own this building. Please let go." "You own nothing." He grabbed her wrist, twisted hard. "You're the help. Know your place, girl." I'm asking calmly. Release my arm. A black woman in an apron doesn't give orders to a white cop. He leaned closer. Ever. Simone Sullivan didn't scream, didn't beg. "You're making the biggest mistake of your career." Wrong answer. He slammed her face first onto the marble floor. Champagne glasses shattered. Blood on white stone. 50 people watched. Nobody moved. But Simone smiled. Her eyes drifted toward the window. A black military SUV pulled up outside, 4-star flags on the hood. Her brother had arrived. Have you ever been humiliated simply because of the color of your skin? 3 hours earlier, the evening had started like any other at the Monarch. The restaurant occupied the entire top floor of Sullivan Tower, 58 stories above downtown Chicago. The building itself was an architectural marvel, glass and steel reaching toward the sky, a monument to ambition, a testament to what was possible when talent met opportunity. Inside the Monarch, crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Each one cost more than most people earned in a year. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the glittering Chicago skyline. Lake Michigan stretched endlessly to the east. The city lights sparkled below like earthbound stars. White tablecloths, sterling silver cutlery, wine bottles that cost more than most people's monthly rent. This was where Chicago's elite came to be seen. Politicians, celebrities, business titans, and tonight, a waitress worth $2.3 billion. At exactly 6 o'clock, a black woman walked through the service entrance. She wore a simple black waitress uniform. No jewelry, no designer watch, no visible sign of wealth. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her shoes were practical, comfortable, made for hours of standing. Her name was Simone Sullivan. She was 34 years old, and she owned everything within a 3-block radius. Nobody knew. That was exactly how she wanted it. Simone moved through the kitchen with easy familiarity. She knew every corner of this place, every tile on the floor, every pot on the rack, every person who worked here. "Ms. Sullivan." Roberto, the head chef, looked up from his station. His weathered hands paused over a delicate sauce. His face broke into a warm smile. "You're here again? You could buy 100 restaurants, 1,000. Why do you keep doing this?" Simone tied her apron and smiled back. "My grandmother waited tables for 40 years, Roberto. 40 years of carrying plates. 40 years of sore feet and aching backs. She always said you never really understand a business until you've done the hardest job in it." Roberto shook his head, but his eyes were fond. "Your grandmother was a wise woman." "She was the wisest person I ever knew." In the corner of the kitchen, Walter scrubbed pots with weathered hands. He was 72 years old, had been washing dishes for 50 of those years. His back was bent, his fingers were arthritic, but his smile was warm as summer sunshine. Simone walked over and touched his shoulder gently. "How's Eleanor doing, Walter? Did the new medication help with the pain?" Walter's eyes softened, moistened. "Doctor says she's responding real well, Ms. Sullivan, real well. The tumor's shrinking. They think maybe..." His voice broke. "They think maybe she's gonna be okay." "That's wonderful news, Walter. I'm so happy." What Walter didn't say, what he would never say in front of others, was that Simone had personally paid for every cent of his wife's cancer treatment. Every scan, every procedure, every specialist consultation, every night in the hospital. She'd done it quietly, anonymously, without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. because that's who Simone Sullivan was. Not a billionaire who happened to be generous, but a generous person who happened to be a billionaire. There's a difference. A big one. Destiny, the young sous chef, rushed past with a tray of garnishes. She was 24, single mother, 2 kids at home, working double shifts to make ends meet. She paused when she saw Simone. "Table 7's gonna be trouble tonight," Destiny warned. Her voice dropped low. "That cop is back, Halloran, the one who grabbed Keisha last month." Simone's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "What happened to Keisha's complaint?" Destiny laughed. The sound was bitter, hollow, the laugh of someone who'd learned that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. "What complaint? His buddy's the precinct captain. His other buddy's on the review board. Nothing ever happens to guys like him, Ms. Sullivan. Nothing ever changes." "Maybe," Simone said quietly, almost to herself. "Maybe not." She checked her phone. One new message from NS. "Flight lands 9:15. Dinner still on? Been looking forward to this all month." Simone typed back, "Table 12. Can't wait to see you, big brother." She didn't know it yet. Couldn't possibly know. But that simple message would change everything. At 7:30, the trouble walked through the front door. Sergeant Derek Halloran entered the Monarch like he owned the place. He was 48 years old, ruddy complexion, the face of a man who drank too much and slept too little. His badge gleamed under the chandelier light. His uniform was crisp, perfectly pressed. His soul was neither. Behind him came Officer Thomas Kowalski, 32, eager, nervous, the kind of young cop who followed orders without asking questions, the kind who wanted to fit in, to be accepted, to climb the ladder, the kind who'd sell his integrity for a pat on the back. They weren't here for dinner. Not really. Waiting at table 7 was Councilman Vincent Pierce, 56, white, silver hair, expensive suit. He owned a 12% stake in a rival restaurant group, a group that had been hemorrhaging money ever since the Monarch opened. Halloran slid into the booth across from Pierce. Kowalski stood nearby, watching, learning, absorbing all the wrong lessons. "The Monarch's killing my steakhouse numbers," Pierce muttered, keeping his voice low. "Down 30% this quarter. My investors are asking questions. Hard questions." Halloran grinned, the smile of a predator. "Councilman, you know I always deliver. Health violations, fire code issues, whatever you need." He tapped his body camera casually. "Don't worry about this, it's on buffer mode. Recording locally but not uploading. Nobody sees anything I don't want them to see." What Halloran didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that buffer mode meant absolutely nothing in this building. Sullivan Holdings had designed the body camera system used by Chicago PD. Every single unit, every piece of software, and buried deep in the contract was a clause nobody had read carefully. All buffered footage automatically backed up to Sullivan Holdings' secure servers, every 60 seconds, without exception. Every word Halloran said was being saved. Every gesture, every sneer, every moment of cruelty. The trap was already set. He just didn't know he was standing in it. Across the dining room, George and Helen Whitmore sat at their usual table. They were in their 70s, old Chicago money, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. George had spent 30 years as a federal judge before retiring. Helen had been a civil rights attorney. They'd marched in the 60s, had friends who'd died fighting for justice. They watched Halloran and Pierce with quiet disgust. "That man," Helen murmured, nodding toward Halloran. "I've seen his name in the papers. Excessive force complaints, civil rights violations. Nothing ever sticks." George sipped his wine. His jaw was tight. "The system protects its own, Helen. Always has." "Not forever," Helen said. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Not forever." Meanwhile, 40,000 feet above Lake Michigan, A military aircraft began its descent toward O'Hare International Airport. Inside sat General Nathan Sullivan. 4 stars gleamed on each shoulder. His chest was a canvas of ribbons and medals. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit. Each one told a story. Each one represented sacrifice, service, honor. He'd commanded troops in 3 wars, advised presidents, shaped military policy that affected millions. He was one of the most powerful military officers in the United States. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, he was just Simone's big brother, coming home for dinner. An aide approached. "General, your sister confirmed dinner at the Monarch. Also, the Secretary of Defense called again. He needs your input on the NATO briefing before tomorrow's meeting." Nathan closed the folder he'd been reading. "Tell the secretary I'll call him in the morning. Tonight I'm off duty." The aide nodded and retreated. Nathan glanced at the folder beside him. It was labeled Chicago Police Department, Internal Affairs Watch List. Inside were 14 complaints of excessive force, racial profiling, and harassment. All filed against the same officer, all dismissed for insufficient evidence. The officer's name was Derek Halloran. Nathan had been building this case for months, quietly, carefully, patiently, gathering evidence, documenting patterns, waiting for the right moment. He didn't know that moment was racing toward him at 600 miles per hour. The clock on the wall read 8:45 p.m. Simone moved through the dining room with practiced grace. Her movements were efficient, elegant, the result of years of watching, learning, perfecting. Plates balanced perfectly on her arm, smile fixed firmly in place, the professional mask she'd worn 1,000 times before. At table 7, Councilman Pierce was getting impatient. His 3rd glass of wine sat half empty. His face was flushed. His patience was thin. He reached for his glass, then accidentally knocked it over. Red wine spread across the pristine white tablecloth. The stain bloomed outward like blood from a wound. "You!" He snapped his fingers at Simone. The sound was sharp, demanding. "Clean this up! New tablecloth! Now! Move!" Simone approached quickly, professionally. Her face betrayed nothing. She began removing the soiled cloth with practiced efficiency. That's when Halloran grabbed her wrist. His grip was sudden, violent. His fingers dug into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises. "You got an attitude problem," he said. His breath smelled of whiskey and contempt. "I've been watching you all night, walking around like you're better than everyone, like you're something special." Simone's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice stayed calm, level, controlled. "Sir, please release my arm." "Or what?" He squeezed harder, twisted slightly. Pain shot up her arm. "What exactly are you going to do about it, sweetheart?" The entire restaurant had gone silent. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze mid-air. Every eye turned toward table 7. 50 wealthy diners, watching, waiting, doing nothing. Simone pulled her arm free with a sharp motion, stood straight, squared her shoulders, looked Halloran directly in the eyes. "Or I'll have you removed from my restaurant." The words hung in the air. Heavy, defiant, impossible. Silence. Complete. Absolute. The kind of silence that precedes earthquakes. Then Kowalski laughed, high and nervous. "Your restaurant? Did you hear that, Sarge? She thinks this is her restaurant." "I don't think. I know." Simone's voice didn't waver. "I own this building. I own this restaurant. I own every square foot of this block. My name is Simone Sullivan. Sullivan Holdings. Look it up." She paused. Let the words sink in. "I suggest you leave. Now. Before this becomes a much bigger problem than you can handle." Halloran's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, disbelief, suspicion, then rage. Pure, ugly, unfiltered rage. He stood up slowly, made a show of it, adjusted his belt, his gun, his badge, each gesture deliberate, threatening. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the room. His voice carried, projected, performed. "We have a situation here. This woman is clearly disturbed, possibly intoxicated, definitely delusional." He turned to Kowalski. "Call it in. We've got a potential 5150 on our hands. Psychiatric hold." Simone didn't flinch. "I'm completely sober. I haven't had a drop of alcohol tonight, and I'm telling the truth." That's when Pierce chimed in. The councilman stood, adjusted his tie, wore his best concerned citizen face, the face he used for campaign photos and press conferences. "Officers, I'm Councilman Vincent Pierce. I know Commissioner Bradley personally. We golf together." He shook his head sadly, performatively. "I think I smelled alcohol on this woman earlier. She's been acting erratically all evening. Very disturbing." It was a lie. A complete, deliberate, calculated lie. But it was a white man's word against a black woman's. In America, that math rarely favored the woman. George Whitmore rose from his table. His old bones protested. But his voice carried the authority of 3 decades on the federal bench. "Officers, I'm Judge George Whitmore, retired from the federal bench. This woman has done absolutely nothing to warrant this treatment. I've been watching the entire evening. Release her immediately." Halloran barely glanced at him, dismissed him with a look. "Sir, with all due respect, this doesn't concern you. Step back, or you'll be charged with obstruction of justice." A retired federal judge, dismissed like he was nothing, because he was trying to help a black woman. Helen grabbed George's arm. Her eyes were wide, frightened. Not for herself, for him, for what might happen if he pushed further. "George, please, be careful." The message was painfully clear. Even power had limits. Even status had boundaries. Even a white federal judge couldn't protect a black woman from a white cop who'd decided she was guilty. Simone tried one more time. "Call Sullivan Holdings. Ask for Patricia Wells, Chief Legal Counsel. She'll verify everything I'm saying." Kowalski radioed dispatch. His voice was uncertain. "Dispatch, can you run a check on a Simone Sullivan? Claims to be connected to Sullivan Holdings." Static. 30 seconds of agonizing silence. Then, "No criminal record on file. Corporate verification unavailable. That company's owner is notoriously private. No public photos exist in our database." Halloran's smile spread across his face, triumphant, vindicated, cruel. Fantasyland. Just like I said, this woman's completely delusional. The irony was devastating. Simone had spent years protecting her privacy, keeping her face out of magazines, avoiding public appearances. She'd built her empire from the shadows because she wanted to be judged on her work, not her wealth, not her fame. And now that same privacy was being weaponized against her. The shield she'd built had become a prison. Halloran reached for his handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're coming with us. You can explain your imaginary billions downtown." Halloran's face twisted with cruel satisfaction. "That's it. We're done playing games. Turn around." He spun Simone roughly, wrenched her arms behind her back. The pain was immediate, sharp, white-hot. It radiated from her shoulders down to her fingertips. She gasped, but didn't cry out. Wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "Resisting arrest!" Halloran announced loudly, playing to the crowd, building his narrative. "Everyone saw it. This woman is resisting arrest." She hadn't resisted, hadn't struggled, had barely moved. But truth didn't matter here. Only the story he was telling. Black woman, aggressive, dangerous, needed to be controlled. The same story that had been told 1,000,000 times before. The same story that had destroyed countless lives. Kowalski moved in. His face was uncertain, conflicted. But he moved anyway, following orders, going along, being a good soldier. He swept her legs. The fall happened in slow motion. Simone's body twisted in the air. Her face turned toward the floor. Marble. Cold. White. Unforgiving. She hit hard. The sound echoed through the silent restaurant. A sickening crack of cheekbone against stone. The explosive shatter of champagne glasses. Crystal fragments scattered across the floor like frozen tears. Red wine from an overturned glass spread around her, mixed with something else, something darker. Blood. Her blood. Halloran pressed his boot against her back, leaned down. His face was inches from hers. His breath was hot, foul. "This is what happens," he whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "When you people forget your place." You people. 2 words, loaded with centuries of hatred, dripping with generations of contempt. Simone's cheek was pressed against the cold marble. A deep cut above her eyebrow dripped blood onto white stone. Her uniform was torn. Her dignity should have been shattered, but her eyes were steel. "You have no idea," she said quietly, calmly, "what you've just done." "Shut up. You really don't." He pressed harder. She didn't flinch. The room remained frozen. 50 people, wealthy, educated, powerful in their own spheres, connected, influential, and not one of them moved to help. Fear. That's what held them back. Fear of the uniform, fear of the badge, fear of the gun on his hip, fear of becoming the next target, fear of being labeled a troublemaker, fear of consequences. Always fear. A young black couple at table 4 had started recording on their phone. Their hands shook visibly, but they didn't stop. They knew this footage might be the only truth that survived the night. They knew that without video, the story would be written by men like Halloran. Roberto burst through the kitchen doors. His chef's coat was stained. His face was red with fury. "Déjala en paz," he shouted. "Leave her alone. She's done nothing wrong. She owns this restaurant. She's done more good for this city than you'll ever know." Kowalski stepped between them. His hand moved to his taser. "Sir, get back in the kitchen right now. Final warning." "You don't understand. She pays for my daughter's college. She paid for Walter's wife's treatment. Final warning." Roberto's eyes found Simone's on the floor. She shook her head, slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Don't. It's not worth it. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." He retreated, shoulders slumped, tears streaming down his weathered face. Another voice silenced. Helen Whitmore was crying now, openly, unashamedly. Her husband held her hand tightly. His own eyes were wet. "George," she whispered, "we have to do something. We can't just watch this happen. We marched in Selma. We fought for this. We can't just—" "What can we do?" His voice broke, shattered. The voice of a man who'd spent his life believing in justice and was watching it die in front of him. What can anyone do against this? Across the room, a white businessman in a $3,000 suit cut into his steak, chewed methodically, kept his eyes fixed on his plate, pretended that nothing was happening 3 feet away from him. A white woman in pearls whispered to her date, "She's probably crazy anyway. I mean, think about it. Why would a billionaire work as a waitress? It doesn't make sense. She must be mentally ill." The lies we tell ourselves, the stories we invent to avoid uncomfortable truths. It's easier to believe a black woman is delusional than to believe the system is broken. It's easier to assume she's lying than to admit we should help. It's easier to look away than to stand up. Pierce circled the scene like a vulture. His rival's restaurant was becoming a crime scene. His investment was paying off. His problem was solving itself. Officers, I really think a psychiatric evaluation is warranted here. This poor, poor woman clearly needs professional help. It's the compassionate thing to do. Simone laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was clear, strong, utterly unexpected. "Councilman," she said from the floor, "I know exactly why you're here tonight. I know about your steakhouse. I know about your losses. I know about the 30% decline this quarter. I know about the health inspector you tried to bribe last month. Rodriguez, wasn't it? The one whose daughter needed surgery?" Pierce's face went white, bone white. That's slander. Pure slander. She's making things up. It's part of her delusion." "Am I?" Simone's voice was ice. Pure, cold, unbreakable ice. "Check your email tomorrow morning, Councilman. My legal team has been building a file on you for 6 months. Every bribe, every threat, every dirty deal. Documented, dated, ready for the federal prosecutor." It was mostly a bluff. Mostly. But Pierce didn't know that. And his face told everyone everything they needed to know. His confidence cracked. His mask slipped. Just for a moment. But everyone saw. Halloran saw the exchange. Didn't like it one bit. His prisoner was supposed to be broken by now, crying, begging, pleading for mercy. Instead, she was smiling, threatening a councilman, from the floor, with a boot on her back. "What the hell is so funny?" He increased the pressure. She winced but didn't cry out. "You have no idea what's coming, Sergeant. No idea at all." "Nothing's coming. Nobody's coming. You're alone. You're nobody. Just another crazy black woman who forgot her place." "Am I alone?" That smile again. Small. Knowing. Infuriating. Her phone lit up. It had fallen from her pocket during the struggle. Now it lay on the floor 2 feet from her face. The screen glowed. NS, calling Halloran, saw it, reached down, declined the call. "Your mystery caller can leave a message. We'll be downtown by then anyway." "He's not much for messages," Simone said. "He prefers to deliver news in person, always has. Military training, I think." "Military?" Halloran snorted. "What, your boyfriend's in the army? Gonna come save you? Some private first class gonna storm in here and rescue his girlfriend?" "He's not my boyfriend. He's my brother. And he's not a private." At that exact moment, Helen Whitmore gasped. The sound cut through the tension. Sharp, sudden, terrified. She was looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her face had gone pale, white as the tablecloths. Her hand trembled as she pointed. "George! George, look! Look outside!" George turned, looked down at the street 58 stories below. His jaw dropped. A black military SUV had pulled up directly in front of Sullivan Tower. Not a regular SUV, not a civilian vehicle. This one had flags mounted on the hood. Small flags bearing 4 silver stars arranged in a precise pattern. 4 stars. George Whitmore had been a federal judge for 30 years. He knew exactly what 4 stars meant. Only 13 people in the entire United States Army held that rank. 13 people out of over 1 million active-duty soldiers. The doors opened. 2 figures in military police uniforms stepped out first. They moved with precision. Purpose. The kind of movement that came from years of training, years of discipline. Then the rear door opened, and General Nathan Sullivan emerged into the Chicago night. His uniform was immaculate. Perfect. Medals covered his chest in rows of silver and gold and ribbon. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Meritorious Service Medal, 3 campaign ribbons, unit citations. The uniform of a warrior, a leader, a man who had commanded armies and shaped history. He looked up at the restaurant windows. And even from 58 floors below, even through glass and distance and the blur of city lights, his expression was unmistakable, cold, controlled, absolutely furious. "Oh my God," George Whitmore breathed. His voice shook. "That's General Sullivan. I saw him brief the Senate Armed Services Committee 6 weeks ago. He's one of the most decorated officers in the entire military." Helen clutched his arm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "General who? What's he doing here?" Simone answered from the floor. Her voice carried across the silent restaurant, clear, strong, triumphant. "He's picking up his little sister for dinner." Halloran's face went gray. Your brother?" "My brother. He's a 4-star general, yes, Nathan Sullivan. You might have seen him on C-SPAN. He testified before Congress last month about military readiness. Very impressive. I was proud." The elevator dinged. Every head in the restaurant turned toward the entrance. The doors slid open, and General Nathan Sullivan walked into the Monarch. The silence was absolute. General Nathan Sullivan stood in the entrance of the Monarch. His presence filled the room in a way that was almost physical, tangible, undeniable. He was tall, broad-shouldered. His posture was perfect, the result of decades of military discipline. His jaw was set. His eyes were cold. He moved with the measured confidence of a man who had commanded armies, negotiated with world leaders, and made decisions that shaped the course of history. Behind him came 2 military police officers in dress uniforms. Their faces were stone. Their hands rested near their sidearms. And beside them walked Patricia Wells, 53 years old, sharp suit, sharper eyes, chief legal counsel for Sullivan Holdings, a woman who had argued before the Supreme Court twice and won both times. Nathan's eyes swept the room. He took in the overturned tables, the shattered crystal, the spreading wine stain that looked too much like blood, the watching crowd, the 2 police officers. Then his gaze found Simone, on the floor, blood on her face, a white cop's boot on her back. Something in his expression shifted. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He walked forward, slow, deliberate, each footstep echoing in the absolute silence like the ticking of a countdown clock. He stopped 3 feet from Halloran. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it filled every corner of the restaurant. Every syllable carried weight, authority, power. "Get your hands off my sister." Halloran's mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish pulled suddenly from water. "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this doesn't concern the military. This woman is being detained for making false statements and I'm General Nathan Sullivan." The words cut through Halloran's excuses like a blade. "United States Army, Commander of the 3rd Infantry Division, member of the Joint Chiefs Advisory Council." He paused. Let each word land. "That woman on the floor is Simone Evelyn Sullivan, my sister, CEO and sole owner of Sullivan Holdings Incorporated." Another pause. "That means she owns this building, this restaurant, this entire city block, the parking garage where you parked your car, the lot where your precinct gets its coffee." He took 1 step closer. Halloran flinched. "And the company that manufactures and maintains the body cameras your department uses, including the one currently attached to your chest." The color drained from Halloran's face, completely, totally, like someone had pulled a plug. That's impossible. She's a waitress. She was serving tables." "In her own restaurant, yes. She does that. Has for years." Nathan's voice hardened. "Is there a law against that, Sergeant? Is it illegal for a black woman to work in her own establishment? To walk among her employees? To understand her business from the ground up?" Halloran had no answer. Patricia Wells stepped forward. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with surgical precision. In her hands were several documents. "Sergeant Halloran, I'm Patricia Wells, Ms. Sullivan's legal counsel." She held up the first document. "Corporate identification card." The second. "Certificate of ownership for this property filed with Cook County." The third. Her profile from Forbes magazine, which listed her net worth at $2.3 billion as of last quarter. She walked to George Whitmore and placed the papers in his hands. "Judge Whitmore, would you be kind enough to verify these documents?" George examined them, his decades of legal experience evident in the careful way he studied each page, each signature, each seal. Finally, he looked up. His voice was grave. "These documents are authentic, properly executed, legally binding." He turned to face Halloran. "Officers, you have made a catastrophic error in judgment tonight, one that will have severe consequences." Halloran's world was crumbling, but desperation made him foolish. "The body camera footage," he started. "Is already in our possession," Patricia interrupted. Her smile was thin, professional, deadly. "Every word you've spoken tonight, every action you've taken, every civil rights violation you've committed, preserved in high definition." "That's impossible," Halloran's voice cracked. "The camera was in buffer mode. It wasn't uploading to the precinct servers." Nathan took another step forward. They were almost face-to-face now. "Buffer mode, meaning your camera was recording locally but not transmitting to your department's cloud servers." He tilted his head slightly. "But here's what you didn't know, Sergeant, what you couldn't know, because you never read the fine print." He paused for effect. "Under the contract your department signed with Sullivan Holdings 6 years ago, all body camera footage, including buffered footage, is automatically backed up to our secure servers, every 60 seconds, without exception, without fail." Halloran's face went from gray to green. "We have everything," Nathan continued. "The racial slurs, the physical assault, the false arrest, the boot on my sister's back, time-stamped, geotagged, already forwarded to the FBI Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice, and the U.S. Attorney's Office." Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "Speaking of which, the Attorney General's office just confirmed receipt of our evidence package. They're opening an immediate investigation." Halloran's boot finally lifted from Simone's back. Nathan extended his hand to his sister. Simone took it, rose with grace despite the pain that shot through her body. Her movements were elegant, dignified, regal. Blood still trickled from the cut above her eyebrow. Her uniform was torn. Bruises were already forming on her wrists and face. But she stood like a queen claiming her throne. "I told you," she said to Halloran. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle, which made it worse. "The biggest mistake of your career." Halloran was shaking now. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. "Ms. Sullivan, I didn't know. Please, if I had known who you were..." "That's exactly the problem." Simone stepped closer to him. She wasn't tall, wasn't physically imposing. But in that moment, she towered over him like a colossus. "You didn't treat me this way because of who I am, Sergeant. My name didn't matter to you. My accomplishments didn't matter. My humanity didn't matter." Her voice rose, not in anger, in truth. "You treated me this way because of what I look like, because of the color of my skin, because I was wearing an apron instead of a designer dress, because in your mind, a black woman in a service uniform couldn't possibly be anyone important." She paused, let the words sink in. "And you've been doing this for years, to people who don't have a billionaire brother, people who don't have lawyers, who don't have body camera footage backed up to secure servers. How many of them, Sergeant? How many black women have you thrown to the ground? How many complaints have been buried? How many lives have you destroyed?" Halloran had no answer, because they both knew the truth. The applause started with Helen Whitmore. She stood up from her table, tears streaming down her face, and she clapped. Slowly at first, then faster. George joined her. Then the young black couple with the phone. Then Roberto and Destiny and Walter, who had emerged from the kitchen. Then table by table, person by person, the entire restaurant rose, applauding. Not for the spectacle, for the truth, for the crack that had finally appeared in an unjust system. Patricia stepped forward again. Her voice was all business now. Sergeant Halloran, for the record, in the past 18 months, you have accumulated 14 internal complaints for excessive force, racial profiling, and harassment. She scrolled through her phone. February 2023. Excessive force complaint from Marcus Williams. Dismissed. April 2023. Racial profiling complaint from Denise Carter. Dismissed. July 2023. Harassment complaint from Keisha Rawls, one of my client's employees, incidentally. Dismissed. She looked up. 13 complaints, 13 dismissals, all for insufficient evidence, all signed off by the same review board, the same captain, the same system designed to protect officers like you at the expense of citizens like them. She held up her phone. I have the files right here. Every complaint, every dismissal, every victim's name and contact information. Tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in the country will receive copies. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of them. Kowalski had gone absolutely white. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. I was just following orders, he whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who she was. I was just... You didn't what? Simone turned to him. Her gaze was penetrating, unavoidable. Didn't throw me to the ground? Didn't stand by while your partner assaulted me? Didn't watch silently while a councilman lied about smelling alcohol? She approached him slowly. You're 32 years old, Officer Kowalski. 7 years on the force. A few more years and you would have made detective. Good pension. Stable career. Something to be proud of. She paused. Do you have children? His voice cracked completely. A daughter. She's 4 years old. Isabella. Isabella. Simone let the name hang in the air. Beautiful name. What will you tell her, officer? When she's older? When she asks what Daddy did for a living? When she learns that Daddy stood by while a woman was thrown to the ground for telling the truth? What story will you tell her then? Kowalski's shoulders shook. A tear rolled down his cheek. Then another. I don't know, he whispered. I don't know what I'll tell her. Then figure it out, because you had choices tonight, and you made the wrong ones, every single time. Nathan turned to the military police officers. Contact Chicago PD Internal Affairs, the FBI Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice. His voice was ice and steel. These officers are to be held pending federal investigation. Movement near the exit caught everyone's attention. Councilman Pierce was trying to slip away. His face was slick with sweat. His expensive suit was rumpled. His political career was flashing before his eyes. Councilman Pierce. Patricia's voice froze him mid-step. You're on camera too, providing false witness statements, encouraging unlawful detention, conspiracy to interfere with a business competitor through abuse of police power. She smiled, that razor-thin smile that had terrified opposing counsel in courtrooms across the country. The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois is a personal friend of General Sullivan. He's already been briefed on your activities tonight, and tomorrow he'll be briefed on your other activities as well. The bribes, the kickbacks, the building inspectors. Pierce's legs buckled. He collapsed into a nearby chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. You can't do this, he croaked. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I know? I have connections. You have nothing. Nathan's voice was final. Not anymore. Halloran made one last desperate attempt. "This is entrapment!" His voice was high, panicked, hysterical. "You set me up! This whole thing was a setup! She was pretending to be a waitress to trap me!" Simone's response was devastating in its simplicity. "I was working, in my own restaurant, serving customers. The same thing I do every Tuesday." She tilted her head. "That's not entrapment, Sergeant. That's just Tuesday." Something in Halloran snapped. He lunged, didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. Rage and fear and desperation driving him forward like a wounded animal. Nathan was faster. In one fluid motion, the kind of motion that came from decades of combat training, the general stepped between Halloran and his sister. His hand caught Halloran's wrist, twisted, redirected. The sergeant's momentum carried him forward and down. He hit the floor hard. The same marble floor where Simone had lain minutes before. Nathan leaned down. His voice was barely a whisper, but everyone heard it. "Touch her again. Please. Give me a reason." Halloran didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even breathe. The fight had left him completely. Chicago PD officers arrived within 20 minutes, summoned by Nathan's calls. Briefed by Patricia's evidence, the scene was surreal. Sergeant Derek Halloran, 23-year veteran, multiple commendations, being led out in handcuffs by his own colleagues. His face was blank, shocked, the face of a man whose entire world had collapsed in less than an hour. Officer Thomas Kowalski followed behind, head down, shoulders slumped, tears drying on his cheeks. Councilman Vincent Pierce was next. The young black couple photographed him being escorted out. Their hands were steady now. That photo would be on every news site by midnight. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Cameras, lights, reporters speaking urgently into microphones. A black billionaire, a 4-star general, 2 corrupt cops, a crooked politician. This was the story of the year. Simone watched them go. Nathan stood beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I will be. We got them, Simone. After all these months, we finally got them." She shook her head slowly. "We got these ones, Nathan. But there are thousands more like them. Millions of people they've hurt who don't have what we have, who don't have lawyers, money, a 4-star general brother who shows up exactly when needed. Then we keep fighting." Simone looked up at her brother, the general, the protector, the man who had dropped everything, the Secretary of Defense, the NATO briefing, everything, to have dinner with his little sister. "Yeah," she said softly. "We keep fighting, until it changes, until it's different. Until no one else has to go through what I went through tonight." The video hit the internet at 11:47 p.m. By 6 o'clock a.m., it had been viewed 52 million times. Justice, when it finally comes, moves with surprising speed. Within 72 hours of the incident at the Monarch, the Department of Justice announced a formal investigation into Chicago PD's handling of excessive force complaints. Not just Halloran's. All of them. Going back a decade. Within a week, 3 senior officers had been placed on administrative leave. The captain who had dismissed Halloran's complaints. The review board members who had rubber-stamped the dismissals. The internal affairs investigators who had looked the other way. Within a month, the dominoes began to fall. Sergeant Derek Halloran was terminated from the Chicago Police Department. 23 years of service. 23 years of commendations and promotions and protected brutality. 23 years of complaints filed and dismissed and buried. All of it gone. But termination was just the beginning. Federal prosecutors indicted him on 4 counts of civil rights violations under 18 U.S.C. Settlers 242. The body camera footage, his own footage from his own camera, was the star witness for the prosecution. Every racial slur captured in perfect high-definition audio, every moment of the assault preserved in crystal clarity. Every lie he told, documented and time-stamped. He faced up to 10 years in federal prison. His attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. The prosecutors weren't interested. "We're making an example," the U.S. attorney told reporters. "When police officers abuse their power, when they violate the civil rights of the citizens they're sworn to protect, there will be consequences, real consequences." Halloran's wife filed for divorce 3 days after his arrest. She'd seen the footage, seen who her husband really was when he thought no one was watching, heard the words he used, watched him press his boot into a woman's back. Maybe she'd always known, somewhere deep down. Maybe she'd just chosen not to see. Either way, she was done. Officer Thomas Kowalski's fate was different. He was suspended without pay pending investigation. His badge was taken. His gun was confiscated. Everything he'd worked for was gone. But unlike Halloran, he had a choice: cooperate fully, testify honestly, or go down with his partner. He chose to cooperate. His testimony revealed years of systemic abuse within the precinct. The unwritten rules that protected bad cops. The threats against anyone who spoke up. The culture of silence that had allowed men like Halloran to thrive. Names, dates, incidents, cover-ups. He gave them everything. In exchange for his cooperation, prosecutors recommended reduced charges. He would lose his badge forever. His pension was gone. His career in law enforcement was over, but he wouldn't go to prison. Whether he deserved that mercy was a question for philosophers, or perhaps for his daughter someday, when she was old enough to understand. Councilman Vincent Pierce resigned from the Chicago City Council on a Thursday morning. No press conference, no statement, no defiant last stand, just a brief letter of resignation and a cleared-out office. The federal investigation into his activities was just beginning. The bribes, the kickbacks, the building inspector scheme that Simone had mentioned. It went deeper than anyone had imagined. His restaurant group lost 3 major investors within 2 weeks, then 2 more, then the rest. By the end of the month, they were filing for bankruptcy protection. Pierce's attorneys were negotiating a plea deal, 5 to 7 years most likely. The judge assigned to his case had a reputation for harsh sentences in public corruption cases. But the biggest casualty was someone who hadn't even been at the Monarch that night. Police Commissioner Bradley had signed off on dismissing Halloran's complaints for years. His signature was on every buried report, his approval on every covered-up incident. His fingerprints were all over a system designed to protect abusive officers. When the internal audit revealed the scope of the cover-ups, spanning a decade, involving dozens of officers, affecting hundreds of victims, he had no choice. He resigned. "I take full responsibility for the failures of leadership during my tenure," he said at his final press conference. Empty words. Politicians always took full responsibility. It cost nothing to say and meant even less. But this time, there were actual consequences. He would never work in law enforcement again. His legacy was forever tainted. The name Bradley would become synonymous with corruption and cover-ups. 4 months after the incident at the Monarch, 23 officers across 3 precincts faced disciplinary action. Complaints that had been dismissed for years were reopened. Victims who had been ignored were finally heard. The system hadn't been fixed. Not completely, maybe not ever. But a crack had appeared, and through that crack, light had begun to shine. Simone Sullivan stood at a podium in the ballroom of the Chicago Hilton. Behind her hung an enormous banner, Sullivan Justice Initiative. The room was packed. Reporters, cameras, politicians, activists, community leaders, ordinary citizens who had traveled from across the city to be there. "Today, I'm announcing the creation of a $50 million foundation," Simone said. Her voice was strong, clear. "The Sullivan Justice Initiative will provide free legal aid to victims of police misconduct. We will fund independent body camera oversight technology. We will support families who have been failed by a system that was supposed to protect them." She paused, looked out at the crowd. $50 million is a lot of money, but it's not enough. It will never be enough. Not until the system changes. Not until accountability becomes automatic. Not until a black woman in an apron gets the same respect and protection as anyone else. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Sullivan, why continue working as a waitress after everything that happened? Simone smiled, that same quiet, knowing smile she'd worn on the floor of the Monarch. Because the problem isn't what I did. The problem is what they assumed. When Sergeant Halloran looked at me, he didn't see a person. He saw a stereotype, a category, a thing to be controlled. Her voice hardened. Until that changes, until people like me can exist in the world without being seen as threats or suspects or the help, I'll keep showing up. I'll keep working. I'll keep watching. She leaned into the microphone. And I'll keep fighting, until it's different, until it's better, until it's right. The applause was thunderous. Nathan stood in the back of the room, watching his sister. Pride radiated from every line of his face. This was what he'd fought for. Not just in that restaurant, but his whole career. Justice, dignity, a world where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. They still had a long way to go. But tonight, they'd taken one more step. 6 months later, a community center on Chicago's South Side, fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a room full of young people, black and brown and white, rich and poor, hopeful and skeptical. Simone stood at the front, talking about entrepreneurship, about building something from nothing, about refusing to let other people's expectations define your limits. The door opened. A figure entered, hesitant, nervous, out of place. Thomas Kowalski. He was in civilian clothes now, jeans, a plain jacket. He looked smaller somehow, without the uniform, younger, more human. The room went quiet. People recognized him. They'd seen his face on the news, knew what he'd done, knew what he'd been. Simone studied him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Mr. Kowalski. Ms. Sullivan. He swallowed hard. I'm not Officer Kowalski anymore. I'm just Thomas now, just Tom. Why are you here, Tom? He took a deep breath. His voice shook. I completed my testimony. Did my community service, lost my job, my pension, my career, everything I spent 7 years building. He paused. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. What I did that night, what I didn't do, I have to live with that forever. Then why are you here? My daughter. His voice cracked. Isabella. She's 5 now. She asked me the other day what I do. I told her I'm trying to be better. She asked, better at what, Daddy? A tear rolled down his cheek. I didn't have an answer. I couldn't tell her. I want to have an answer. I want to be someone she can be proud of. Someone who does good instead of what I did. The room was absolutely silent. Simone didn't speak for a long moment. The weight of the decision, and everything it represented, hung in the air. Finally, she said, We're launching a police community liaison program next month. It's hard work. No pay for the first 6 months, maybe longer. You'd be working alongside people who have every reason to hate everything you used to represent. Kowalski nodded rapidly. I understand. I know. Do you? Really? She stepped closer. Her voice was firm, but not cruel. The people you'll be working with, their brothers have been beaten by cops. Their sons have been killed. Their mothers have been harassed. Their fathers have been humiliated. And you wore that uniform. You were part of that system. I know. It's going to be hard. Every single day. For years. Maybe forever. You'll never fully escape what you were. I know. I'm ready. Simone studied him for a long moment, searching for something in his eyes. Sincerity, maybe, or perhaps just humanity. Then show up. Every day. And when it gets hard, and it will get hard, Tom, remember why you came. Remember Isabella. Remember this moment. She extended her hand. Kowalski stared at it. Then, slowly, he took it. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something else. A chance. An opportunity. A door cracked open, just slightly. What he did with it was up to him. Redemption isn't given. It's earned. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One step at a time. 1 year later. The Monarch restaurant. The same dining room. The same crystal chandeliers. The same white tablecloths. The same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. And the same woman in a simple black waitress uniform. Simone Sullivan walked through the dining room, carrying plates, refilling water glasses, checking on guests, smiling at regulars. Some recognized her now. The billionaire who served tables, the woman who had brought down a corrupt cop, the face of a movement. Most didn't, and that was fine with her. People ask me why I still do this, she said in an interview once. Why work when I don't have to? Why wear an apron when I could wear a gown? She smiled. Because power isn't about what you wear. It's not about what you own. It's not about how many people know your name or fear your influence. She paused. Power is about how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It's about who you are when no one's watching, when no cameras are rolling, when there's no audience and no applause. Every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves to be seen. Every person deserves to be treated as a human being, not because of their wealth, not because of their connections, not because of who their brother is, because they're human. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's not a privilege to be earned. It's a right to be demanded. If this story moved you, share it. Not for views, not for likes, not for algorithms or engagement metrics. Share it because somewhere out there right now, there's a Simone who doesn't have a 4-star general coming to save her. There's a Destiny too afraid to speak up. There's a George Whitmore who stayed silent when he should have stood. Be the person who changes that. When you see injustice, don't look away. When you witness abuse, don't stay silent. When someone is being treated as less than human, stand up. You don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be a general. You just need to be brave enough to do what's right. That's how systems change. That's how the world gets better. One person at a time. True power isn't about what you own. It's about who you lift up. So let me ask you, what would you have done? And more importantly, what will you do now? Like this story, share it, subscribe, and remember, justice isn't given, it's demanded.